At 7:30 in the morning, two people take the same 20-minute walk. One walks before breakfast. The other finishes dinner, puts on comfortable shoes, and walks around the block. Both are doing something healthy. Both are using their muscles. Both are burning energy. But if the goal is to reduce the rise in blood sugar caused by a meal, those two walks are not happening at the same biological moment. The real question is not simply, what is the best time of day to walk? The better question is, when does my body most need my muscles to help manage glucose? For many people, the answer is not sunrise. It is not a perfect clock time. It is the period after eating, especially after the meal that creates the largest blood sugar rise. And for a surprising number of adults, that meal is dinner. But there is a reason this works, a reason it does not work equally for everyone, and a common mistake that can make a good habit much less effective. Your blood sugar is not supposed to stay perfectly flat all day. After you eat carbohydrates, your digestive system breaks them down into glucose. That glucose enters the bloodstream and becomes available fuel. Your pancreas responds by releasing insulin, a hormone that helps move glucose from the blood into cells. Think of insulin as a key, and think of your muscles as a vast collection of locked rooms. After a meal, insulin helps open the doors so glucose can enter. Some glucose is used right away. Some is stored in the muscles and liver as glycogen, a backup fuel reserve. If more energy arrives than the body needs, some of that surplus can eventually be stored as fat. This system is normal. The problem is not that blood sugar rises after eating. The problem is when glucose remains elevated for longer than it should, or when the body needs increasingly large amounts of insulin to control it. That can happen more easily with age, reduced muscle mass, inactivity, poor sleep, excess body fat around the abdomen, certain medications, and meals high in refined carbohydrates or added sugar. Many people assume the best time to walk is early in the morning, preferably on an empty stomach. Morning walks can be excellent. They can improve mood, establish a routine, increase daily activity, and help some people feel more alert. But a fasted morning walk does not automatically make it the best walk for post-meal blood sugar. Your body does not give bonus points simply because you have not eaten. It responds to the demands placed on it. If there is little glucose circulating from a recent meal, your walking muscles may rely more on a mix of stored glycogen and fat. That is still useful. But if your specific goal is to soften the glucose rise after lunch or dinner, then walking near that rise gives your muscles an opportunity to remove glucose from the bloodstream when it is actually there. This is the hidden system most people miss. Muscle contractions can help bring glucose into muscle cells through pathways that are not entirely dependent on insulin. In simple terms, when a muscle starts working, it does not just wait politely for insulin to unlock the door. It sends its own signal. We need fuel now. More glucose transporters move toward the cell surface, and glucose can be pulled in and used. That is why walking after a meal can be so practical. You are not trying to punish yourself for eating. You are giving the glucose from that meal a place to go. Imagine two possible evenings. In the first, you finish dinner and sit down for 3 hours of television. Your meal is digested. Glucose enters the bloodstream. Insulin rises, and your muscles remain mostly quiet. The pancreas and liver must handle most of the traffic. In the second evening, you finish dinner and take a comfortable walk. Your leg muscles begin contracting. Your arms swing. Your heart rate rises slightly. Now the same glucose arriving from dinner has a new destination. Working muscles become active consumers of fuel. That is the first important shift. The walk does not erase the meal. It does not make dessert invisible. It does not cure insulin resistance in one evening. But it can reduce the size or duration of the post-meal glucose rise, particularly when repeated regularly. So when should you start? For the purpose of managing a meal-related glucose rise, a practical answer is, walk as soon as you comfortably can after eating, often within about 30 minutes. You do not need to jump up from the table halfway through dinner. You do not need to march through the kitchen before you have swallowed your last bite. But waiting 2 or 3 hours may miss much of the period when glucose is rising. The ideal timing is not a universal minute on a stopwatch. Digestion speed changes with meal size, meal composition, medication, age, insulin sensitivity, and whether you have diabetes. A meal high in fiber, protein, and fat may release glucose more gradually than a meal built around sweet drinks, white bread, fries, or dessert. Still, the general principle is simple. If you want walking to help with a glucose rise, place the walk close to the meal. Now comes the open question. If walking after meals is so useful, should you walk after breakfast, lunch, dinner, or all three? The answer depends on where your biggest glucose challenge appears. For some people, breakfast is the problem. Morning hormones can make blood sugar more difficult to manage after waking. Cortisol naturally rises in the early hours to help the body prepare for the day. The liver may release more glucose into the bloodstream around that time. If breakfast is also high in quickly absorbed carbohydrates, a large muffin, sweet cereal, toast with jam, juice, or a flavored coffee drink, the combination can create a noticeable spike. For that person, a short walk after breakfast may be a powerful tool. It does not need to be a demanding workout. 10 to 15 minutes at an easy to moderate pace may be enough to turn the muscles into a glucose sink. The goal is not breathlessness. The goal is consistent muscle contraction. For others, lunch is the vulnerable meal. This is common in people who eat quickly at work, have a large sandwich with chips, or return immediately to a desk afterward. The meal is followed by sitting. The legs remain still, the body remains folded over a chair, and hours can pass before meaningful movement occurs. A brief walk after lunch can interrupt that pattern. It may be a lap around the building, a walk through a hallway, a few trips up and down a safe staircase, or a short errand on foot. The exact location matters less than the fact that the muscles are being used near the meal. Then there is dinner. For many adults, dinner is the largest meal of the day. It may include more carbohydrates, larger portions, alcohol, or dessert. It is also often followed by the longest uninterrupted sitting period of the day. That makes evening a particularly important window for blood sugar management. In studies of older adults at risk for impaired glucose tolerance, shorter walks after meals improved day-long glucose control and were especially useful for lowering the rise after dinner. This makes biological sense. When the meal is large and the hours afterward are inactive, the body has fewer opportunities to use the incoming glucose. A short post-dinner walk changes that. But do not turn this into a rigid rule that says everyone must walk at night. If walking outside after dark is unsafe, if you have balance concerns, if the weather is poor, or if evening exercise disrupts your sleep, choose another time or walk indoors. The best time is the one that matches your glucose pattern and can be repeated safely. This brings us to the real biological conflict. Your body is constantly deciding whether to store fuel or use it. After eating, insulin is higher, and the body is in a storage-friendly state. Between meals, insulin usually falls, and stored fuel becomes easier to access. Walking affects this balance, because active muscles require energy immediately. During a post-meal walk, your muscles can take up some glucose, while insulin is already present from the meal. This combination can be useful. Insulin opens doors. Muscle contraction creates demand. Together, they make it easier for glucose to leave the bloodstream and enter the tissue where it can be burned. But timing alone cannot overcome everything. If dinner contains far more food than your body needs every night, a 10-minute walk is not a free pass. If sleep is poor, stress is extreme, alcohol intake is high, and daily movement is low, blood sugar may remain difficult to control. The walk is not a trick. It is one tool that works best inside a larger system. The liver is a major part of that system. Between meals and overnight, the liver releases glucose to keep blood sugar from dropping too low. After a meal, insulin usually tells the liver to reduce that output and store some incoming glucose as glycogen. In insulin resistance, that conversation can become distorted. The liver may keep releasing glucose when it should be slowing down, while the body also struggles to clear glucose from the meal. Walking does not directly command the liver to become healthy, but by helping muscles use glucose, it can reduce the amount of work required from the liver and pancreas. Over time, regular activity can support better insulin sensitivity. That means the body may need less insulin to manage the same amount of glucose. Your muscles are not just there to help you climb stairs or carry groceries. They are one of the largest organs involved in blood sugar management. This is why losing muscle with age matters. When muscle mass and strength decline, there may be less tissue available to absorb glucose after meals. That does not mean older adults need punishing workouts. It means walking and simple strength training become even more valuable. A short walk after eating is often easier to maintain than a long workout that requires special clothing, a gym, travel, and a large block of free time. The smaller habit can attach itself to something you already do: breakfast, lunch, or dinner. The first few minutes after a meal are often enough to expose the biggest mistake people make. They wait for motivation. They tell themselves they will walk later. Later becomes after the television show, after checking the phone, after finishing work, after the dishes. Then the meal-related glucose rise is already well underway, and the walk becomes less connected to the original goal. The solution is not more willpower. It is a smaller decision made in advance. Shoes by the door. A walking route already chosen. A rule such as, after my largest meal, I move for 10 minutes before sitting down. The more automatic the habit becomes, the less it depends on motivation. What about walking before a meal? A pre-meal walk can still be beneficial. It burns energy, improves fitness, strengthens the habit of movement, and may affect how your body handles the next meal. Some people prefer it because it fits their schedule, or helps them arrive at the table with a calmer appetite. But if your main target is the glucose surge from a particular meal, walking after that meal is usually the more direct strategy. It is like placing a bucket under a leak. Walking before a meal may prepare the floor. Walking after a meal helps catch the water when it begins falling. What about walking on an empty stomach first thing in the morning? Again, it can be healthy and convenient. It may help you feel awake, improve cardiovascular fitness, and create consistency. But fasting is not automatically superior for glucose control. If you take glucose-lowering medication, use insulin, are prone to dizziness, or wake up with low blood sugar, fasted exercise requires extra care. In some people with type 2 diabetes, a morning walk can lower glucose. In others, the body's morning hormone response may make the pattern less predictable. This is why personal data can be useful. If your clinician has recommended finger-stick monitoring, or you use a continuous glucose monitor, you may notice that your response differs by meal and time of day. Perhaps breakfast causes the highest rise. Perhaps dinner is the problem. Perhaps a large lunch followed by long sitting is your weak point. Do not chase perfect numbers after every meal, and do not change medication based on an exercise experiment without professional guidance. But if you already monitor glucose, patterns can help you decide where walking gives you the greatest return. Now let us follow the timeline of a post-meal walk. You finish a meal. In the first several minutes, digestion has only begun. Food enters the stomach and starts moving into the small intestine. Carbohydrates are broken down, and glucose begins appearing in the bloodstream. Your pancreas senses the change and releases insulin. If you remain seated, the glucose response depends mostly on meal composition, insulin action, liver behavior, and the amount of active tissue available elsewhere in the body. If you begin walking at a comfortable pace, the legs start contracting rhythmically. Blood flow increases to the working muscles. The muscles ask for fuel. As the walk continues, glucose transport into muscle can increase. Your body uses a mixture of carbohydrate and fat for energy. At a gentle pace, fat contributes substantially, but glucose can still be used effectively, especially when it is arriving from a meal. You do not need to be drenched in sweat. You do not need to power walk until you cannot speak. A pace where you can talk in short sentences is often enough for a useful start. After 10 minutes, something important has happened. You have created a repeated metabolic demand during a period that would otherwise be mostly sedentary. For many people, that is enough to make the habit realistic. After 15 or 20 minutes, the benefit may be greater, depending on the individual, the meal, and the walking pace. But do not assume longer is always better. A slower, repeatable walk after meals may be more valuable than an ambitious program you abandon after 3 days. After the walk, your muscles do not instantly become inactive at the cellular level. Exercise can improve insulin sensitivity for a period afterward. Regular activity also supports healthier blood vessel function, fitness, balance, mood, and sleep. These broader benefits matter because better sleep and stronger muscles can improve glucose management the next day as well. The body is not a machine that resets at midnight. Tonight's dinner, tonight's walk, Tonight's sleep and tomorrow's breakfast are connected. This is why evening walking can be especially useful, but also why it needs to fit the person. A gentle post-dinner walk may help some people avoid a long period of sitting and may support better glucose control overnight. But a vigorous late-night workout can make others feel wired, raise body temperature, or interfere with sleep. If sleep suffers, the next day's insulin sensitivity may suffer too. So the best evening walk is usually not an exhausting one. It is calm, safe, and repeatable. There is another strategy for people who cannot walk after every meal. Break up prolonged sitting. If you sit for work, long periods of stillness can worsen the body's ability to manage glucose after meals. Short movement breaks, walking around the room, doing gentle chair stands, or moving for a few minutes, can help interrupt that stillness. This does not replace a daily walk. It is a second layer of protection. Think of the post-meal walk as a planned response to glucose arriving from food. Think of movement breaks as preventing the body from staying metabolically asleep for hours. The important switch in this story is not a specific minute after eating. It is the moment your muscles become active while glucose is entering the bloodstream. That is when they can shift from being passive storage tissue to active fuel users. For someone with no diagnosed glucose problem, this may simply be a smart habit that supports long-term metabolic health. For someone with prediabetes or type 2 diabetes, it may be especially useful, but it must be integrated with prescribed treatment. For someone using insulin or medicines that can cause low blood glucose, exercise can change glucose levels more dramatically. In that situation, timing, intensity, food, and medication all need to be considered with a healthcare professional. There are several common mistakes to avoid. The first is walking too intensely right after a very large meal. Hard exercise can feel uncomfortable when digestion is active, and in some people it may cause stomach upset, dizziness, or reflux. Start gently. You should feel like you are moving with purpose, not fighting for survival. The second mistake is treating walking as permission to eat without limits. A short walk helps manage glucose, but it cannot neutralize daily overeating, sugary drinks, or a lack of sleep. Your plate still matters. Meals built around protein, vegetables, legumes, whole grains, and minimally processed foods tend to create a different glucose response than meals centered on liquid sugar and refined starch. The third mistake is only walking once a week for a very long time, then sitting for the rest of the week. One long walk is valuable, but blood sugar management is influenced by repeated behavior. Small, frequent movement gives the body more chances to use glucose. The fourth mistake is ignoring pain, dizziness, chest discomfort, severe shortness of breath, or foot problems. Walking is low impact, but it is not risk-free for everyone. If you have severe neuropathy, an active foot ulcer, unstable heart symptoms, advanced joint disease, or a history of falls, get individualized advice before starting a new walking plan. The fifth mistake is believing that a normal fasting glucose means post-meal glucose is always normal. Fasting glucose and longer-term markers are useful, but they do not show every rise after every meal. If you have symptoms such as excessive thirst, frequent urination, unexplained fatigue, blurred vision, or recurrent infections, seek medical evaluation rather than trying to solve the problem with walking alone. So what is the most practical way to apply this? For the next week, identify your largest or highest carbohydrate meal. It may be breakfast, lunch, or dinner. After that meal, take an easy to moderate walk for 10 minutes. If that feels comfortable, increase gradually toward 15 or 20 minutes on most days. Keep the route flat and safe at first. If weather, mobility, or safety makes outdoor walking difficult, walk indoors. Use a hallway. March lightly in place while holding support if needed, or choose another safe movement option. If you are able, include a few short walking breaks during long periods of sitting. And on separate days, add simple strength work appropriate for your current ability. Stronger muscles have more capacity to handle glucose. A chair sit-to-stand, wall push-up, light resistance band row, or supervised strength routine can complement walking without requiring a gym. The best time of day to walk for blood sugar is not necessarily dawn, noon, or sunset. It is the time when your muscles can help with the glucose challenge you actually have. For many people, that means walking soon after the largest meal, often dinner. For others, it may mean a brief walk after breakfast or lunch. The best plan is the one that matches your physiology, your schedule, your safety needs, and your ability to repeat it. Your muscles are not waiting for a perfect workout. They are waiting for a reason to move. Give them 10 minutes after a meal, and they can become one of the most useful allies your blood sugar has. If you try a post-meal walking routine this week, comment with the meal you chose, breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and subscribe for more science-based explanations of what everyday habits are doing inside your body.